Chapter 231. Shaanxi Festival? How could it be arranged on that day? You don't like it? Li Hongyuan's fingers gently brushed her cheek, which was similarly cold. No, it's not that. It was just that when it came to marriage, it seemed that they would usually choose a double date. It was a bit strange to choose a double date. However, this didn't matter to Jingwan. She herself wasn't that particular about it. Moreover, this date had been chosen and wasn't casually chosen. Would this bastard choose an inauspicious date to get married? However, if she said that she didn't care, he would definitely let people choose another date. However, it would only be brought forward and not pushed back. However, this wedding date was directly told to her like this. It seemed that her family didn't know about it yet. Do you want to walk? It will be cold if you stand here for a while. Li Hongyuan lowered his head to take a look. She was wearing a special pair of shoes. To be exact, it was a small pair of leather boots. The inside was filled with velvet and the surface was decorated. Although it wouldn't be cold for a while, but if she didn't move around outside for a long time, she would definitely be as cold as ice. Jingwan wanted to say, Wang Yi, this is the palace, under the eyes of your father and mother, can't you be a bit more low-key? There were so many people in the warm room and they all heard that it was Su Guifei who wanted to see her. Now, using your adoptive mother as an excuse, was it really okay? However, looking at his expression, it seemed that in his eyes, there wasn't anything bad. Jingwan was discouraged. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's helpless expression and his eyes overflowed with a smile. Let's go. Therefore, Jingwan followed Li Hongyuan for a stroll, neither fast nor slow. Afterwards, she chatted and didn't avoid anything. Whether it was the palace people coming and going or the palace guards, they all clearly saw it. That cloak that was a bit too long for Jingwan, they didn't even need to look at the style to know who it belonged to. She didn't dare to say anything, but she couldn't help but mutter in her heart, was this really the unpredictable and ruthless Jin Wang? Those who didn't know would think that they were husband and wife taking a stroll, and the kind of husband and wife who had a very good relationship. Alright, third young Miss Luo's hairstyle that obviously belonged to a young lady clearly told everyone that they were not husband and wife. It had to be said that the palace had the most secrets and the most secrets, but there was nothing that could be hidden. Therefore it spread the fastest. Even Lu Qingdi soon heard about it, let alone noble consort Su who had been used. Jin Qinhuang did it confidently, without the slightest bit of guilt. Noble consort Su helplessly smiled, but a strange emotion that only she knew rose in her heart. As for other people's reactions, no one cared. In short, no one would call Jingwan to reprimand her. Hey, it's snowing. Jingwan suddenly realized that the snowflakes were falling bit by bit. This was naturally the first snow of this winter. In fact, the snow from a few days ago had not completely melted yet. Then let's go back. Jingwan nodded. She guessed that it was about time. While they were still halfway, Mu Gonggong quickly fetched an umbrella. Jingwan glanced at Mu Gonggong. She knew that you were a good lackey who wholeheartedly thought for your master, but you didn't need to be so attentive to her, okay? Your master was standing at the side. Was it really okay for you to openly rebel against your master? Li Hongyuan took the umbrella and lightly glanced at Mu Gonggong. Although Mu Gonggong was attentive to Jingwan, he still kept his eyes and ears open. Seeing his master's eyes, he quivered. It seemed that he had accidentally gone overboard. Letting the third young miss notice him in front of his master, did he want to die, or did he want to die? He hurriedly shrank to one side. It wasn't like the two had never held an umbrella together before. In addition, there was a height difference between the two, so Jingwan didn't express that she wanted to hold the umbrella herself. Not to mention that it was tiring to hold the umbrella on her head was a bit short compared to Li Hongyuan. It was a hindrance. When Li Hongyuan sent Jingwan back, the people in the warm room just came out. Obviously, they were going to pay a New Year's visit to the Empress. Seeing the two coming together, many people were a little stunned. When Madame Luo greeted Li Hongyuan, they all came to their senses and hurriedly saluted. Jingwan handed the hand warmer in her hand to Li Hongyuan, and then took off the cloak on her body and returned it to him. Your Highness, you can go back. Li Hongyuan looked at her, and their eyes met for a moment. In the end, he didn't refuse. He took the cloak, casually tied it, and then turned to leave. He walked away so decisively that the hem of the cloak flew in a big arc, so that his back looked a little cold, as if the gentleness just now was an illusion. Everyone's eyes fell on Jingwan, and there was obviously curiosity and inquiry in their eyes. Jingwan walked to Madame Luo's side with a calm expression. There was no need to explain this kind of thing. The more she explained, the worse it would be. It was better to not say anything and turn around, forget all about it. Jingwan was a girl and had no rank, so naturally she was with the other girls. Group by group they entered the main hall of the Kunyi Palace. Inside, not only was the empress in the main seat, the other concubines were also all present. They sat on the two sides receiving everyone's greetings. At this time, not only was the empress graceful and dignified, the others were also not far off. They sat with their hands crossed on their legs. Speaking of which, it had always been the children kneeling to their parents, and the younger generation kneeling to their elders. Only in the imperial family was this not the case. In the emperor's place, except for the direct elders, the other uncles and even granduncles had to kneel. In the imperial concubine's place, even the mother, father, grandfather and grandmother had to kneel and kowtow. This was the imperial power. Ordinary people might not think much about it, but if it was a concubine's daughter who was not favored at home and was even tortured by her official mother, after entering the palace, she would be very happy when her official mother knelt at her feet. There would be no banquet in the palace today. After the collective greetings, they could basically go back to their own homes and get lost. In fact, Jingwan was quite speechless about such a custom. What was the use of such torment and starvation? Those high-ranked concubines might be able to show their faces, but those low-ranked concubines could only kowtow outside. However, even so, Jingwan still felt that many people were quite happy. That was right, it was deeply ingrained. Being able to enter the palace to pay respects was a kind of honor, showing one's status. In other words, many people wanted to suffer but they did not have the chance. After everyone paid their respects, they chatted in twos and threes, and some people began to leave the palace. Jingwan was about to leave the palace with Madame Luo when she was told that noble consort Su had invited her. Her feet paused. It seemed that this time, it was really noble consort Su who invited her. Jingwan slightly lowered her eyes. Previously, when Jin Qinhuang asked people to call her away, noble consort Su would not know that he was borrowing her name. So, looking for her now, generally speaking, she would not let people say it directly. Now, there would probably be many people thinking that this Luo third young lady was really deeply liked by noble consort Su. This time she really treated her like a treasure. As for whether it was sincere or sarcastic, noble consort Su was as gentle and amiable as always, saying that her son had a bad temper and was always willful and reckless. It was her, as a mother, who did not teach him well. She hoped that Luo third young lady would be more tolerant and so on. If he wanted to do something, just let him do it, there was no need to pay attention to him. Jingwan responded with a smile on her face, but in her heart, without a doubt, Jingwan received a reward from noble consort Su. Leaving the palace, Jingwan got on the carriage. Madame Luo was waiting for her. Seeing Jingwan affectionately put the box on the small table, "Grandmother, let's go back." Madame Luo nodded. The coachman outside got the signal and waved the whip, the horse started to gallop. Madame Luo's face was like an ancient well without any ripples. Others may not be able to see it, but Jingwan was very clear that her mood was not good. "Grandmother, don't be angry, nothing happened." "What did noble consort Su say to you?" Jingwan did not mind and roughly relayed noble consort Su's words. Madame Luo hooked her lips into a smile, but it was very cold. No matter if she was a real kind mother or a fake kind mother, Madame Luo knew that Jin Qinhuang was not a filial son. With his care for Wan, he would let others bully her for no reason. Jin Qinhuang probably would not do anything to her, but her own son Rui Qinhuang, before His Majesty sealed his pen, Rui Qinhuang was in constant trouble. If someone said that there was no one behind his back, no one would believe it. As for who it was, some people felt that it was them. So when they saw Rui Qinhuang being unlucky, they were secretly happy. But in reality, since you touched his heart and liver, naturally don't blame him for using a knife on your heart and liver. When Li Hongyuan learned of this matter, he was indeed very unhappy. That day Luo Jingying sat in her own courtyard in a daze, watching the snowflakes that kept falling from the sky. There was no one around to serve her, so it was chilly. However, she did not care at all. In any case, her body was already damaged, so what if the cold air entered her body? There was no hope at all. Even if someone wanted her to take care of her body and give birth to a child, don't even think about it. She got pregnant on her first try and it was even a male fetus. Just treat it as her giving birth well and not give any benefits. Let her give birth to a child and treat it as giving her a great grace? Dream on? The servants in the courtyard were probably nestled in their rooms, warming themselves by the fire, eating and playing cards. A maidservant walked in front of Luo Jingying and gave her a hand warmer. Luo Jingying withdrew her gaze and looked at her face. Her eyes were like a pool of stagnant water. She held the hand warmer, and that warm feeling made people subconsciously yearn for it. "I don't have any benefits here. If you want to curry favor, you found the wrong place. The maidservant smiled unconcernedly. Does Shiqing want to take revenge? Do you want to take revenge on that heartless man? Luo Jingying finally showed some expression, but her expression was still cold and even a little guarded. Shiqing, you're making a scene in the backyard of the prince's mansion, but to Prince Rue, it's not a big deal. Princess Rue controls the prince's mansion very strictly, and she won't let the things in the backyard spread out. Prince Rue has been in trouble in the imperial court recently, so he's in a bad mood. Maybe your actions will completely anger him. He won't take your life, but he can drug you and make you dizzy all day long so you can't even die. In addition, even if you're helping Princess Rue to a certain extent, when Prince Rue wants to deal with you, don't expect her to help you. After all, such a close servant died because of you. Do you think she'll be magnanimous enough to not hold a grudge? She won't go against her own husband. Who are you? Luo Jingying was even more guarded. Moreover, she did care about what she said. Shiqie, you don't need to know who I am. You just need to tell me whether you want to take revenge or not. It would be a lie to say that she didn't want to take revenge. She was so miserably deceived by Li Hongming. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't be in such a bad relationship with her family, and she would have a good marriage. She would be able to hold her head high and be his official wife. With the backing of the Minister of the Ministry of Personnel, no one in her family dared to be disrespectful to her. Now she had nothing and could only wait for death. Prince Rue doesn't have a son now. Don't you want him to be without a son forever? Don't you want him to be heartbroken when he remembers that he should have had a son, but he lost it because of himself? The maid bewitched her. Luo Jingying's heart suddenly pounded. When Prince Rue gave up on her, she still had a glimmer of hope to redeem him. But the child was gone. Not only did it completely destroy her hope, but it also made her hate him. When she thought that he wouldn't have a son in his life, she inexplicably felt very happy in her heart. But, you can think of a way yourself. The maid chuckled. Don't you want to take revenge for your child? Shiqie, you know it yourself. If Prince Rue didn't act inappropriately, causing your pregnancy to be affected again and again, and in the end deliberately letting others provoke you, would your child be gone? He is the culprit. Luo Jingying's eyes were full of hostility. She knew all of this. Those women were desperately using these things to attack her. Otherwise, she wouldn't hate Prince Rue to such an extent. Give it to me. The maid revealed a knowing smile. Oh, fortunately, she wasn't really hopelessly stupid. If she met someone who was stubborn no matter what, it would be really troublesome. But if she really was this kind of person, she probably wouldn't have chosen her. She put a small bag of medicine in Luo Jingying's hand. This medicine is colorless and tasteless. After taking it, there won't be any problems from the pulse, and there won't be any obvious signs of poisoning. At most, it'll be similar to a cold and dizzy for 2 days. So, Shiqie, you just need to be careful and you won't be discovered. Luo Jingying's eyes lit up. She originally had the idea of perishing together. Since that was the case, she should live well and see him regret it. Ah! Seeing her smile, the maid rubbed the goosebumps on her arms. This woman was really scary when she went crazy. It was better to leave quickly. It wouldn't be good if they were discovered. On the second day of the new year, it was time for the married grandmothers to return to their maternal families. Madame Wang and Madame Lu's maternal families were in the capital, so they naturally had to go back. However, Madame Zhang and Madame Wu's maternal families weren't there, so there was no need to specially leave someone to entertain them. Madame Zhang wasn't good at this aspect, but Madame Wu had been the housekeeper for a few years when she was in Qian Manor. Although there weren't many social contacts at that time, and she was far inferior to Madame Wang in this aspect, it was more than enough to entertain her own family. Madame Zhang just needed to help on the side. As for the grandchildren, the 2 married grandmothers would definitely come back. Little Madame Wang's child was already more than 4 months old, so she would also bring the child with Madame Wang. As for Sun Yijia, firstly, she didn't want to go back to Duke Ding's manor. Secondly, she was about to give birth. If she gave birth early, she could have an attack at any time. Not to mention herself, no one in the Luo family would allow her to go out. Jingwan's courtyard was quite lively. Not only did the 2 married cousins come to her place, but the girls who went to other families also came to her place. Her eldest cousin sister's temperament was actually somewhat similar to her mother, Madame Wang. They were both people who were very good at judging the situation. She was very clear about the attitude of the people in the Luo family. For example, she knew that Jingwan needed to be close to her. However, because she was a few years older than Jingwan and hadn't seen her for a few years, suddenly being too close to her was definitely not good. She could only do it step by step. For example, the good rouge and face powder that Jingwan sent her, as well as the shares of the Rouge Pavilion that she bought, she should express her gratitude to her. In this way she would get closer to her step by step. Jingwan knew the rules inside. However, her eldest cousin sister didn't have any bad intentions, so she could accept the way she did things and didn't dislike it. As they chatted and laughed, they didn't know how they got to the matter of entering the palace yesterday. Younger sister Wan, is it true that Her Majesty the Empress intends to let the second legitimate daughter of the Minister of Works be Prince Kang's step-consort? Yuan Xiaoqiao asked curiously. Who did you hear that from? I don't know. Jingwan said in surprise. My mother. I didn't follow her into the palace yesterday. My mother said that Her Majesty the Empress kept that girl. I don't know about that. Later on, I went to see Her Highness the noble consort. If that's really the case, then it's a pity that the girl is betrothed to Prince Kang. Didn't they say that although Prince Kang's life was saved, his body was damaged? Who knows what will happen in the future? That girl isn't much older than you. Don't listen to hearsay. Prince Kang is a prince, so the heavens will protect him. Who knows when he'll recover? Sun Yijia said with a smile. She used a skewer to pick up a piece of fruit. It had been specially heated and preserved in autumn. It wasn't easy. Yuan Xiaoqiao made a face at Sun Yijia, and then expressed that she wouldn't say anything more. Everyone else laughed along with her. However, Jingwan felt that it was very likely that Her Majesty the Empress would take a fancy to the Minister of Works' daughter. Compared to the other 5 ministers, the Minister of Works had a great advantage in age. The others were all in their 50s or 60s, but he was less than 40. He could be said to be young and promising. Although he wasn't as powerful and influential as the ministers of the Ministry of Personnel and the Ministry of Revenue, his future was limitless. To be honest, in terms of status, that girl was more honorable than Jingwan. Not to mention the second princess consort, she could even be the first princess consort. Based on what Jingwan learned from her grandfather, this Minister of Works didn't seem to be a neutral person. However, who he was loyal to was debatable. As for Prince Kang's health, whether it was good or bad, it wasn't known for the time being during the new year. After the 15th, it would be clear based on the movements in the imperial court. https://11/118076653330. Chapter 232. 2 days later, it was said that Prince Rui got sick, and it seemed to have started on the first night of the Spring Festival. His Majesty had stopped writing, but during the Spring Festival, all the princes who had been conferred the title of prince would go to the palace every day. Even the married princesses went to the palace more frequently, so that Lu Qingdi, who was rarely free, could enjoy the joy of family reunion. Although Lu Qingdi disliked Li Hongming recently, he had always valued his son, so he would not say those annoying things during the Spring Festival. In fact, Prince Rui was a little relieved. But he fell ill inexplicably, which was not a bad thing for Li Hongming. Princess Lu took the child to the palace. She was obviously tired, but she still forced a smile. Lu Qingdi frowned and asked. Princess Lu seemed to be very relaxed and understated. Father, I'm sorry to make you worry. Prince Rui is fine, just a little cold. Prince Rui also wants to go to the palace to serve father, but he is worried that he will be sick, and that he will be unfilial to father, concubines and other relatives. Noble consort Su asked a few more questions at the right time. I saw that Ming'er was fine before the Spring Festival. You have always been a virtuous woman, so you can take care of him well. Why did he catch a cold so easily? She was also a little worried. Princess Lu frowned inadvertently. It's my fault. But Prince Rui hasn't been to the backyard for a long time. He goes back to the front study every day. I can only send someone to ask. Sometimes Prince Rui doesn't go to bed until very late. To put it more simply, mental and physical exhaustion was the main cause of his illness. Imperial consort Su quickly rubbed the corners of her eyes and reprimanded, You can't be blamed for this. It's just that scoundrel clearly knows that it's the festive period of the new year. Instead of resting, he's looking for trouble. His Majesty has already sealed his brush, so what could he possibly be busy with? He is so unfilial. He is not worthy of being a son. It's time to teach him a lesson. My dear, you are too serious. He is sick. As his mother, you don't care about him. How can you say that he is wrong? Call 2 more imperial physicians to take a good look at him and recover as soon as possible. That bastard asked for it. Your Majesty, why do you care about him? You'll know what's good for you next time. Lu Qingdi was amused. How can I leave him be? After the 15th day of the lunar year, he still has to share my worries. He'll be busy. I was too shallow. Luqingdi then rewarded them with many good herbs and asked Princess Lu to take care of him at home. He knew they were being filial, but it would not be too late for them to do so after he recovered. The others watched as the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law worked together to dissolve Li Hongming's bad impression in Luqingdi's mind. Imperial concubine Su didn't hesitate to point out the things that could be used against her. What else could the others say? Well, it was better to make him half dead than to be killed by someone else. Everyone knew the twists and turns, but there was no chance for them to speak. After all, Luqingdi loved his son dearly. If he tried the same trick on someone else who was not favored, he might be reprimanded. Originally, many people were secretly delighted when they saw that Li Hongming made frequent mistakes and was reprimanded again and again, which made Luqingdi angry. However, before they could do anything, he turned the tables. How could they not be angry? They didn't expect that Li Hongming would play the trick of injuring himself to gain sympathy at this critical moment and play the emotional card. Yes, few people believed that Li Hongming really caught a cold. It was most likely that he did it on purpose. It was because he chose such a special time that it was unexpected. Li Hongyuan looked on coldly. He had restrained his temper recently and was being a good son. Luqingdi was still wondering why he changed his temper. As a result, Li Hongyuan didn't give him a good face, which made him feel at ease. It was just a cold. Who would suspect anything? If nothing happened in a few months, after a year, when there was no movement in the backyard of Prince Rui's mansion, people would naturally be anxious. At first, they might not have any doubts about Prince Rui, but when there was no movement from the pregnant woman, then, Li Hongming had never paid much attention to children. He always thought that he could have as many children as he wanted after he ascended the throne. If he knew that he couldn't have children, how much energy would he spend on the court and how much energy would he spend on having children? These days at the beginning of the year, it was just relatives and friends visiting each other. After the 6th day of the year, it was almost time for the people below to visit him. Naturally, it was necessary to build relationships. Naturally, the Luo family was much livelier than in previous years. The busiest one was probably Madame Wang, who asked her to be in charge of the family affairs. She had to deal with all aspects properly. She was the wife of the head of the household, and this was also a must. If she really gave up the power in her hands for the sake of her leisure, she would most likely be unhappy in her heart. Not only her, but every family would be the same. However, her sisters-in-law basically didn't fight with her for power and didn't secretly make things difficult for her, which saved her a lot of trouble. She should thank the heavens. It was really sullen to work hard and still have a stomach full of anger. When the visits to relatives and friends came to an end, starting from the 11th or 12th day, every household began to hang up lanterns one after another. Many high-ranking officials and nobles also began to build lanterns, lighthouses, and lampstands in the streets near Wandanglu. And starting from the 13th day, the Lantern Festival began. From the 15th day until the 13th day, the lanterns were brightly lit for 3 consecutive nights. At the same time, every household began to send lanterns. The only newly married daughter of the Luo family was Luo Jingqiang. She wasn't as lucky as Sun Yijia, who was pregnant at the beginning of her marriage. However, not long ago, it was normal for a married girl to not be pregnant for 1 or 2 years. However, because of Sun Yijia, Luo Jingqiang was probably still a little anxious in her heart. Fortunately, a pregnancy pulse was diagnosed a few days ago. And almost the day after that, the eldest daughter, Luo Jingshu, also sent good news that she was pregnant with a second child. This was naturally a happy event for the Luo family. The 2 families each sent a pair of large palace lanterns, a pair of colored glazed lanterns, and 2 pairs of small lanterns, hoping that they would have a safe pregnancy. As for whether the Luo family had infertile relatives or friends who sent lanterns as a sign of good fortune, Jingwan didn't know. And Sun Yijia naturally also received lanterns from Duke Ding's mansion, which were sent by old Madame Sunday. On the 15th day, not only the younger generation went out that night, almost the whole family went out. However, it was a pity that Sun Yijia still couldn't go out. It was about the next few days. That little guy could come out at any time. Luo Jingbo was naturally left behind. He didn't care. It would be better if he brought his wife and child with him next year. And Emperor Luqingdi would also come out tonight, bringing the concubines, unmarried princesses and unmarried princes to have fun with the people. After eating all kinds of glutinous rice balls, Jingwan dressed up like the elders. The route was different from the last Mid-Autumn festival. From the beginning, it was to avoid all kinds of diseases. No matter if the women were married or unmarried, they would walk together and cross the bridge when they saw it. As the saying goes, crossing the bridge to avoid danger and prevent diseases to prolong life. In the capital, except for some small bridges, there were probably only bridges on the river beside the 10,000 Lanterns Tower and on the moat. Because the 10,000 Lanterns Tower was in the city, it was far away from the moat on any side. Except for those who lived close to the moat, probably no one would deliberately walk there. However, because there were many women in the noble families for a long time, both sides of the river were directly cleared. In order to avoid colliding with each other, the route was basically fixed. Jingwan held old Madame Luo's arm, and the rest of the Luo family next to her. They slowly moved forward with the big group, and it even felt like they were rubbing shoulders. In more than 10 years in Qiyuan, this was the first time Jingwan came into contact with such a dense crowd. Of course, it was not as scary as some special environments in her previous life. However, if they walked too fast, old Madame Luo's body wouldn't be able to take it. This was like a stroll, but it was just right. They walked a total of 5 bridges and it took them about 2 hours. After crossing the bridge, the elders chased away the younger generation. They would either invite them to continue strolling or find a place to sit and chew their teeth. It was their own pleasure. The most lively thing tonight was naturally the various performances. Dragon lanterns, lion dances, stilts walking, rowing, these were the most basic. There were also acrobatics, opera performances, and everything else. Everywhere they walked, it was abnormally lively. On the lanterns and lampstands of the various families, there were also performances. Compared to the performances organized by the common people, these performances were naturally more beautiful. It should be known that all the opera troupes in the capital were booked, and all of them were performing at the same time tonight. And in this way it was simply a different kind of competition. The troupe with the most people watching in front of them would naturally be the most popular. The final result was likely to directly affect the business of the troupe for the year. Jingwan was not very interested in opera, and she was basically stuck at the level where she could understand it. Yuan Xiaoqiao pulled her around 1 street, 2 streets, and 3 streets. In her hand, Yuan Xiaoqiao forced a lantern into her hand. Yuan Xiaoqiao seemed to be particularly fond of the folks' acrobatics. She was in high spirits and walked faster than Jingwan. Then she accidentally got separated. However, Jingwan was not worried. After all, there was always someone by her side. Jingwan stood in place with the lantern and laughed. She is really full of energy. If such a person was always restrained by rules and regulations, she would definitely be very uncomfortable. Jingwan felt that this cousin would be very fond of the environment of her previous life. There were so many fun things and no one would care about how she played. Jingwan jumped when her waist was suddenly wrapped around. She unconsciously turned her head and saw who it was. Jingwan patted her chest. "Your Highness, you can scare people to death. Can you not suddenly attack me?" Thinking about it, no one would do such a bad thing except for her. Moreover, Nurse Gong and the black and white beauties were there. Normal people would not be able to get close to her. Li Hongyuan laughed and scratched her nose. "You're so timid?" "It's not a matter of being timid. It was a biological reflex." "Alright, it's my fault. How do you want me to apologize?" "There's no need for an apology. It's not that serious. Your Highness, just don't scare me next time." "There won't be a next time," Li Hongyuan promised her. Then Jingwan noticed that many people around them were secretly looking at them. Only then did she realize that he was still holding her waist. It was because she was used to this kind of intimacy in private that she didn't think of avoiding him at this time. Her face was a little red. "Your Highness, let go of me first." Even if these people did not know them, being looked at with accusatory eyes still made her feel very uncomfortable. At times like this, she really missed her previous life. Li Hongyuan did not make things difficult for her. "You should have been gone for a long time, right? Are you hungry? Let's go get something to eat." Jingwan nodded. It was really a bit disgusting. Using his wide sleeves as cover, Li Hongyuan took Jingwan's hand and rubbed it with his fingers. Compared to Jingwan's delicate and smooth hands, Li Hongyuan practiced martial arts all year round. He drew bows and arrows and used all kinds of weapons. Naturally, his hands were much rougher. However, this roughness was not enough to scratch her skin. It was a bit numb. Jingwan struggled, but she couldn't break free. "Wanwan, this is the bottom line," Li Hongyuan said neither lightly nor heavily. Jingwan was speechless. Meeting such a domineering and unreasonable guy, what else could she do but compromise? Oh, Jingwan actually saw a street full of snacks. Moreover, it was this noble prince who brought her here. It would be a lie to say that she was not surprised. Jingwan originally thought that he would take her to a big restaurant nearby. Although this place was just next to the hall, it was relatively quiet. Moreover, looking at the people coming and going, she knew that they were all ordinary people. As the saying goes, everyone follows the crowd. Due to the difference in social status, there was no rich person coming here. Naturally, there would not be a trend. People of their class did not know about it. Even if they knew, it was normal that they would not come. There is a restaurant here that sells delicious yuanxiao, Li Hongyuan said. Jingwan did not ask how he knew. Since we are already here, let's try the other things? In her previous life, Jingwan was born in a rich family. Before her family fell, she could be considered as a member of the upper class. Naturally, she had not eaten food from roadside stalls. However, later on she had tried it. Some of the food was still not bad. Li Hongyuan frowned slightly. He did not think that these things were not good. After all, in his previous life, there were times when he could not be picky. However, in this life his food and clothing were the best. In addition, it was not necessary. He really did not like these things. However, when he saw Jingwan's pleading eyes shining under the light, he could not bear to refuse. In the end he nodded. Just try it. Don't eat too much. Jingwan quickly nodded. Of course, I will just try it. This street did not look short. There were a lot of things. Even if she only bought some, it was unrealistic to eat from the street all the way to the end. Jingwan excitedly began to choose. The first thing she looked at was naturally the hygiene. She would definitely skip those that did not pass. Her stomach had been carefully cultivated for more than 10 years. It was estimated that it was already very delicate. If she ate anything that was not clean, the chances of her stomach getting a stomachache were too high. Speaking of which, these small vendors would occasionally see people who were dressed luxuriously. At first glance, they could tell that they were not ordinary people. However, they would often show a look of disgust. Even if they wanted to try something new, they would frown and pout. Sometimes they would spit it out in one mouthful. Not only would they not pay, they would also smash the stall. As a commoner, they did not even have a place to complain. If they only smashed the stall, it would be considered good. If they beat up the stall, it would not be worth it. Based on the above, in fact, these people would not be happy to meet ordinary people. Instead, they would be worried. Especially when there was a delicate young lady who did not eat the sufferings of the world. They might not have bad intentions, but they would always inadvertently bring trouble to others. Therefore, when she saw Jingwan came forward. She did not dare to boast. Instead, she was nervous. Jingwan was a little puzzled. However, she did not say anything. She directly bought a portion and let the maidservant pay directly. Then she would taste it. If it was delicious, she would eat more. If it was not delicious, she would let the maidservant hold it. In this way she bought and ate at the same time. Occasionally she would let a certain prince have a taste. Seeing that his face was full of disgust, but because she was stubborn or wanted to tease him, she would feed it to him. Every time Li Hongyuan reluctantly ate it. Jingwan laughed very happily. There were only a few people who could make this prince compromise. Jingwan felt a sense of achievement. Perhaps it was because they saw that the people in front of them had sold their things and didn't attract any trouble. Some of the people in the back became a little bolder. When Jingwan came closer, they would even call out in a low voice. Speaking of which, when Jingwan bought it like this, it really brought about some small changes. For example, there was a kind of follower mentality in the world. Ordinary people, when they saw that kind of rich people bought it, they could not help but want to try it. And when she did not buy it, it would make people subconsciously feel that it was not good. Then they noticed that she took one bite and some took 2 bites. Usually she would only let the man eat it after she took 2 bites. Did this mean that it was delicious? Then they bought it and tasted it. And it was really not bad. As expected of someone from a rich family, it was amazing. So much so that the small vendors who discovered this situation became bolder. They all hoped that their own things would be fancied. Because it was the Lantern Festival, there were naturally many people selling lantern dumplings. When they arrived at Li Hongyuan's lantern dumplings stall, the entire street was almost empty. Jingwan was almost 70% full at this time. Regardless of the fact that Jin Qinwang had specially made a trip for this stall, she still wanted to try it. In fact, the tables and stools were wiped very clean. The same was true for other things. So she sat down and just happened to rest her feet. Soon, a small bowl of lantern dumplings was served. It was small and exquisite. Jingwan tasted one. Her eyes slightly brightened. It was really good. https://11/11807/66533334. Chapter 233. Jingwan subconsciously covered her mouth and then looked around. This place was relatively remote and there weren't many people, so no one noticed them. The people following behind them all looked down and pretended not to see anything. Jingwan finally let out a sigh of relief and glared at this increasingly unscrupulous bastard who didn't care about the occasion. Li Hongyuan looked at her with a gentle expression and gentle eyes. Wan, don't be angry. I just couldn't control myself for a moment. Jingwan had an expression that said, I'd be a fool to believe you. No, even if it was like this, he couldn't do it like this, bastard. As expected, the wedding date was set too late. Li Hongyuan seemed to sigh helplessly. Your Highness should be glad that you are a favored prince. Jingwan said through gritted teeth. If he wasn't favored, even if he was a prince with his grandfather's status, he could delay her marriage until she was 16 years old. It wouldn't be like now, where everything was in the palm of this bastard's hand and there was no room for negotiation. Wan, you really don't want to marry me? Li Hongyuan's eyes seemed to be a little hurt. Jingwan pursed her lips and didn't say anything. This guy was really good to her. In a feudal dynasty where imperial power was supreme, there weren't many people who could be this good to her. Although he had a bad reputation after he was engaged to her, there didn't seem to be any unbearable rumors. She was the one who chose him, so she naturally wouldn't refuse to marry. She just didn't want to marry so early. Wan, you really don't want to marry? Li Hongyuan's deep affection was tinged with a bit of coldness. Was this the rhythm of falling out at the slightest disagreement? No, it should be blackening. He wasn't a good person to begin with. His heart, liver and lungs were all black. If he blackened even more, wouldn't he become like ink from head to toe, inside and out? Your Highness, you're thinking too much. It's definitely not like that. Jingwan hurriedly promised. But a certain person's face was dark, as if he didn't believe Jingwan's words at all. Jingwan wanted to cover her face. When this bastard was nice to her, she had nothing to say, but when his temper flared up, it was hard to coax him. If she didn't coax this bastard now, she would probably suffer tonight. Suddenly, she grabbed him by the collar and stood on her tiptoes. I'll give you a taste of your own medicine. She let go of him, turned around and left in a hurry. Damn it, she was too ashamed to face anyone. Li Hongyuan touched his lips with a smile in his eyes. He was slowly getting to know Jingwan's temper better and better. Most of the time, she was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. However, it was not a problem to be forceful occasionally. However, he could not go too far. If he provoked her temper, she would probably fight with him to the end. Therefore, it was not useless to have people secretly keep an eye on him for years. At least, he understood Jingwan faster than Jingwan understood him. And Jingwan, who could not figure out his temperament, must have compromised more times. She continued to stroll slowly on the lantern street. There were so many dazzling and colorful performances that it made people clap their hands and praise. Selectively, she forgot what happened just now. Here, of course, was not as remote as in other places. From time to time she could meet people she knew. But because of Li Hongyuan's prestige, people usually avoided her in advance unless they accidentally met him face to face. This reduced Jingwan's embarrassment. Not to mention other things, even if they just deliberately glanced at her and said a few words, it was enough to make her uncomfortable. Unconsciously, she walked to the Thousand Lanterns Tower. She arrived at the right time and happened to see hundreds of people dancing together. They were not women's light movements, nor were they enchanting. Instead, they were men. They were holding torches, heroic and heroic. They changed their formation quickly and powerfully. In the blink of an eye, they even built a human tower with 3 or 4 floors. They jumped down and lit a huge water tank which turned out to be wine. The cheers were endless. Your Highness, His Majesty wants to see you. Eunuch Mu said calmly behind Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan looked back and glanced at the palace servants who were standing outside the guards. They were the servants of Emperor Lu Qingdi. When they saw Li Hongyuan looking at them, they hurriedly put on a flattering smile. They had no choice. This master was their ancestor. They had to serve him well. Li Hongyuan withdrew his gaze. Wan, I can't accompany you tonight. It's not early now. Why don't you go back and rest early? His father rarely went out to have fun with the people. In the past few years he had nothing to do, so he just spent time on the side. The other brothers also did the same. This year he had been absent all the time. Compared to him, some people felt unaccustomed. Jingwan didn't know what was going on. She just nodded. She had been out for a long time. She guessed that her grandmother and others had already gone back. Your Highness, please go. I'll go back in a while. Li Hongyuan nodded and turned to leave. However, the palace servant obviously glanced at Jingwan. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Li Hongyuan also glanced at him. Then he ignored him and walked away. The palace servant couldn't help but tremble. He didn't dare to say anything and followed Li Hongyuan's guards. Jingwan also realized that he was going to ask her to go with him. However, since he stopped her, Jingwan was quite happy. Whether it was the emperor or a concubine, Jingwan didn't want to see them. Seeing them made her tense and uncomfortable at all times. In this case, she'd better go back early. Therefore, Jingwan didn't look up even though she knew that those people were at Wandang Tower. The performance was coming to an end. After watching it, she walked back slowly. At Wandang Tower, Li Hongyuan saw Emperor Liqingdi. He took off his cloak and eunuch Mu hurriedly took it. Li Hongyuan walked to Emperor Liqingdi. "This son greets Imperial Father." Emperor Liqingdi glanced at him. "Your wife didn't come up?" "Imperial Father, please be careful with your words. This son and Miss Luo haven't married yet. Don't tarnish her reputation." Emperor Liqingdi almost vomited blood. Who was the ghost who hadn't seen his wife for 8 lifetimes? It was because of his suppression and the reputation of this vile creature, Gui Jianqiu, that no rumors had spread. But now he was actually making false accusations? Sure enough, he shouldn't have asked him to come. He was asking for it. "Get out. I don't want to see you." Li Hongyuan glanced at Emperor Liqingdi as if to say, "Since you don't want to see him, why did you ask him to come? You're simply making trouble for no reason." Emperor Liqingdi magically understood at that moment. Because he understood, he felt even more depressed. Why did he raise such an unfilial son? He and Wanru were obviously not like this. Who did this bastard take after? Li Hongyuan was considerate this time. He didn't really leave but sat down next to Emperor Liqingdi. Emperor Liqingdi obviously snorted with disdain, but didn't say anything. The performance was wonderful, and the other princes and ministers were occupied with it. Who knew what the father and son were talking about and doing, right? As soon as Jingwan returned home, she was told that her sister-in-law's son Yijia had a relapse. She was stunned at first and then immediately came to her senses. She had expected it. Even today it was not strange. After all, the 15th day of the first lunar month was a good day. The little guy really knew how to pick the time. However, it was said that the first baby was relatively slow. Today was almost over, so the possibility of the baby being born today was not big. The little guy should be born a little earlier. The old maid guarding the door told her at this time, probably to please her. Jingwan was not stingy and asked the maid to reward her directly. The old maid smiled from ear to ear. "When did sister-in-law have a relapse?" "Third young lady, not long after you went out, third young madam had a relapse." In this way she didn't send anyone to inform them. Everything was ready. Without them there would be no hindrance. She wouldn't give birth for a while. The couple probably thought so too. Jingwan didn't go back to the Haitang house to change clothes. She went directly to the yard next door. Outside the delivery room, the female elders were all there. Luo Jinghua kept walking in circles outside the door, looking very nervous. However, Jingwan was shocked by Sunny Jia's cry. Wasn't it just a short time? Why did she cry so hard? What would happen when the baby was born? Or was it really very painful at this time? Wan is back. Grandmother, sister-in-law is... Wah wah wah. Before Jingwan finished a sentence, she heard a loud cry. Was she giving birth? Jingwan was really stunned. She gave birth, she gave birth. Everyone was very happy. Madame Luo also stood up at once. Then she saw Jingwan in a daze and couldn't help but pinch her face. What's wrong? She gave birth? Isn't it said that the first child is slow? Jingwan said subconsciously, looking like she was still in a daze. You silly child. Madame Luo couldn't help but pinch her again. It varies from person to person. Your sister-in-law is so fast. Although it's rare, it's not unheard of. Besides, if she gives birth quickly, she will suffer less. Isn't it good? Jingwan finally came back to her senses. Of course it's good. The sooner the better. She also showed a sincere smile of joy. Mother, if you ask me, this child has a special fate with third young lady. Didn't third young lady come out as soon as she was born? Didn't she come out to see her biological aunt? Wang sure said with a smile. That's right. Isn't that the case? When she was in her mother's womb, this aunt worried a lot. Although Jingwan didn't care about such words, she was quite happy now. The midwife quickly came out with the properly treated child and opened the door. Congratulations, Madame Luo. Third young madam has given birth to a little daughter. When she said this, although she was smiling, she looked at Madame Luo with a little caution. Good, good, good. You will be rewarded. Madame Luo took the child with a smile and weighed it. It's quite heavy. Seeing that Madame Luo was not unhappy, the midwife's smile became more sincere. If this family didn't like girls, they might be angry. Yes, the child is 92 pounds. Obviously the midwife thought too much. With Jingwan as a precedent, not to mention Madame Luo, even the entire second branch would not dislike Sun Yijia for giving birth to a daughter. They might even like her more and dote on her more. Even Sun Yijia herself said that she wanted a child like her aunt. Jingwan did a little calculation. Qi Yuan was also 16 ounces per catty, but she estimated that it was more than 600 grams per catty. In this way, according to the calculation in her previous life, this child should be more than 8 catties, maybe close to 9 catties. Jingwan couldn't help but feel a little shocked and a little scared. This was obviously a little big. In this era where one careless mistake could lead to the death of 2 people, sometimes it would be better to have a smaller child. Where's my sister-in-law? How is she? Yes. Where's Yijia? How is Yijia? Luo Jinghua also hurriedly asked. Jingwan glanced at him. Her body was still a little tense and it seemed that she just came back to her senses. Third young mistress gave birth smoothly. There won't be any problems. This old woman has been delivering babies for so many years, and this is the first time that third young mistress has had such a smooth delivery. Luo Jinghua sighed. That's good. Jingwan also felt relieved. If something happened to the adults, it would be really. Madame Luo handed the child to Luo Jinghua. There was a saying that a man would carry a grandchild but not a child, but she didn't do that. This is your daughter. Hug her properly and be close to her. Don't be like your old man who doesn't act like a father. Luo Jinghua was at a loss. He didn't know how to hug her. On the other hand, Madame Zhang, who wanted to hug her granddaughter, was at a loss. Her husband didn't act like a father and she didn't act like a mother either. But at this time no one was paying attention to her. Everyone's attention was on the child. Madame Luo carefully adjusted Luo Jinghua's posture and slapped his arm. Relax. The child will be uncomfortable if you're too stiff. It's still cold and the swaddling clothes are thick. If it's summer you can't carry the child like this. Luo Jinghua also wanted to relax, but the problem was that this was not something he could control. Third brother, let me hug her. Jingwan also felt a little itchy. Madame Luo took the child and handed it to Jingwan. It wasn't that Jingwan had never carried a child before, but this was the first time that she was carrying a newborn, so she was very careful and didn't make any mistakes. Ah, the little guy opened his eyes. Jingwan looked at the child and said in surprise. It seems that this child really likes you, his biological aunt, the most. Of course. Jingwan couldn't help but feel proud. After the room was cleaned up, Jingwan and the others went in to take a look. Sun Yijia was awake and seemed to be in good spirits. When Luo Shangshu returned to the Fu, he was very happy to know that he had a great-granddaughter. The next day, all the servants in the Fu received another reward. This was what Luo Jinghua and Sun Yijia had agreed on. They didn't necessarily need to express their concern for the child in such a way. Moreover, the child was a girl. No matter how their own family members saw it, in the eyes of outsiders, she was definitely not as noble as Sun Jinji, the eldest son of the eldest son. Even if the child was a boy, he would probably be considered inferior. If it was too grand, it would instead attract gossip. Moreover, the child was born at a good time. If the child's fortune was too great, it was best to keep a low profile. After the Lantern Festival, the inside and outside of the imperial court became busy again. Whether this undercurrent was surging or not, it had nothing to do with Jingwan and the others. On the second day of the second month, the dragon raises its head. At the same time, it was also Jingwan's birthday. She was 15 years old. According to reason, it should be done once, but Jingwan refused. She would be married in a month. The person she was marrying was a prince. At that time it would be very grand. There was really no need to be extravagant now. It was simply extravagant and wasteful. Therefore, she didn't even invite her relatives and friends. She just held a small celebration for her own family. Jingwan received gifts from her relatives. Other people aside, Li Hongyuan's gift would definitely not be lacking. Jingwan expressed that her small storeroom was almost full. Jin Qinhuang, can you take it easy? When the time comes, these things will have to follow her. Moving things will also be very tiring. A certain person turned a deaf ear. On the 15th day of the second household's eldest granddaughter's 1 month old. Similarly, it was just a small celebration. The little guy was already wrinkled at the beginning and had grown white and tender. She also gained a lot of weight. Her small hands and feet were like lotus roots. She looked very cute and strong. Little Wangsher was very envious. When my child was 1 month old, she was far worse than this little guy. That child was just born a little worse. If she is raised well, there will definitely be no problem. The next day, Jin Qinhuang and Jingwan sent betrothal gifts. Generally speaking, the prospective bridegroom would personally send betrothal gifts to the female side. As a descendant of the heavenly crown, they would basically not personally send betrothal gifts. However, Li Hongyuan did so. The betrothal gifts and the Nikalai were basically fixed. However, on the Nikalai, Li Hongyuan did a good deed. No one thought that he would stop this time. Jingwan could only hope that he would restrain himself a little. However, when Jingwan saw the things, sure enough, she was still too naive. In Jin Qinhuang's dictionary, there were no such words as low-key and restrain. This time, Li Hongyuan did not find trouble with the Imperial Household Department. However, with the previous example, the Imperial Household Department did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. The things they used were the best. The quantity, other than the hard and fast rules, was doubled according to the last time. In the end, these things were sent to Jin Qinhuang Fu. Obviously, Li Hongyuan was preparing to send the gifts from his own Wang Fu. The entire street where the Luo family was located, from the end of the street to the end, was filled with boxes tied with red silk. Looking at the gait of the people carrying the boxes, one would know that the contents were definitely solid. Some of the things that were not suitable to be put into the boxes looked ordinary. The most unusual ones were probably those two golden deer. Their skin was smooth and glossy, and their antlers looked sturdy and strong. It must be said that when the betrothal gifts were sent to the families of high officials and nobles, they would only use deerskin as a gift. Should it be said that Jin Qinhuang was indeed worthy of being called Jin Qinhuang, such a big hand? When all the things were lined up in the front yard of the Luo family, they were packed to the brim, stacking up to 2 or 3 layers high. The 4 Quanfu Furins who came to send the betrothal gifts were all Li Hongyuan's elders. If they were not Qin Wang Fei, then they were Jun Wang Fei. When old Madame Luo saw this, the corners of her mouth twitched. When she received the list of gifts from the matchmaker, she flipped through it page by page. Old Madame Luo really wanted to ask Li Hongyuan, in your eyes, did our family treat Wan so harshly? Are you sending the betrothal gifts, or are you directly giving our family's granddaughter a dowry? With these things, other than the furniture and the dowry, the Luo family did not need to prepare anything else? https://11/11807/6653336. Chapter 234. Looking at the list of betrothal gifts, at the very front was the monetary gift of 10,000 taels of gold and 300,000 taels of silver. Luo Laofurin suspected that he might have hidden even more money in this pile of things. It wasn't cash or silver but gold and silver notes. It seemed that for every prince's marriage before, the highest monetary gift was 5,000 taels of gold and 100,000 taels of silver. That was Kong Wang. He was the eldest D son, so the others couldn't surpass him. The imperial family had the imperial family's rules, but Jin Wang broke them. Fortunately, there was no rule that stipulated that officials and commoners had to be on par with the imperial family and could not overstep their authority. The necessities at the back had practical and symbolic meanings. These things, no matter how carefully they were prepared, were actually not that valuable. For example, combs, rulers, scales, mirrors, scissors, abacus, and so on. How could you possibly make something out of them? Betrothal pancakes, seafood, 3 types of animals, fish, coconut, wine, sieging fruits, 4-colored sugar, tea leaves, sesame seeds, calligraphy boxes, incense sticks, gold bracelets, and 2 meters of rice. He could add as much as he could, but he couldn't. Jin Wang, where did you put these 3 animals? There are only 2 golden deer among the living creatures. You can't put those animals into the chest because they are not presentable and beautiful enough, right? What if he suffocated? There were also all kinds of precious leather, not counted by sheets but by rolls. There were also moonlight silk, peacock silk, mermaid silk, all of these top-grade materials, 20 bolts each. Then there were cicada wing silk, soft smoke gauze, jacquard silk, and so on, 400 bolts of all kinds of fine silk, 400 bolts of all kinds of colored satin, 400 bolts of flower satin, 400 bolts of brocade, 400 bolts of brocade, 400 bolts of cloud brocade, 400 bolts of Sichuan brocade, 400 bolts of silk yarn, 400 bolts of velvet, 400 bolts of palace silk, 400 bolts of satin, 400 bolts of cotton, and 600 bolts of cloud satin. And this was only the material. There were also all kinds of cloaks, capes, and ready-made clothes. There were at least 1,000 pieces, dozens of square boots, dozens of pointed boots, 400 pairs of embroidered shoes, and 400 pairs of river silk stockings. And this was just the combination. If they were all broken down, it would be even more frightening. Madame Luo only took a few glances at the back and didn't want to look any more. But after just a few glances, even that old heart of his couldn't take it anymore. For example, there were 4 chests of pearls of different colors and 1 chest of gems of different colors. Did you see that? It wasn't just a few chests but the number of chests. There were 36 sets of head ornaments. Although it wasn't written in detail, it was obvious that it was definitely something good. Since when were these things so cheap? Looking at his handwriting, he didn't care at all. It was just a worthless trinket for Jingwan, something that he would throw away for no reason. Madame Luo put down the list of gifts beside her hand and took 2 deep breaths. Finally, she still couldn't calm down. Didn't they agree that regardless of the size of the betrothal gift, whether it was expensive or not, she couldn't sound humble or arrogant when giving the betrothal gift? She had to show respect to the other party. It's true that Li Hongyuan didn't say much from the beginning, but these things of yours. If your highness cares about Wan, you can give it to her after the 2 of you are married. How can it be the same? Li Hongyuan asked indifferently. Madame Luo was speechless. It was indeed different. After the marriage, no matter how many things she received, it would only show her husband's love. But now that it was sent over as Jingwan's dowry, it would truly be Jingwan's things. Her private property would show Jingwan's own confidence. Even if some people suspected that it was given by Jin Qinhuang, these things wouldn't be exposed now. Moreover, when Madame Luo received the list of gifts, it was obvious that this list of gifts had been sealed well. It was very obvious that this list of gifts wasn't even seen by the several full fortune Furins or the matchmaker. It was enough to see that Li Hongyuan had considered all these aspects. Madame Luo looked at the other people accompanying her. Fine, they were all just going through the motions. They didn't have anything to do at all. The Luo family held a banquet to entertain. The list of betrothal gifts was sent to Jingwan. Although Jingwan didn't go to the front, she knew that someone was stirring up trouble again. There were many relatives who came today. There were some who wanted to see the list of betrothal gifts, but Jingwan wasn't anything special. How could she let them see it? She just smiled and directly ignored them. Even if they were dissatisfied with her, no one would shout it out. The things in front of the list of gifts were all picked up separately. The rest were all carried to a small courtyard behind the begonia house. That place was originally meant to temporarily store Jingwan's large dowry. Later it simply became her warehouse. It was also just right. Otherwise, there would be no place to store the things that Li Hongyuan sent today. It could be seen that the Luo family had never thought about the betrothal gifts from the beginning. Then all the betrothal gifts were given to Jingwan. Fortunately, there were only 10,000 taels of gold and 10,000 taels of silver. The rest were banknotes. Otherwise, with so much money it would take up a lot of space. When Li Hongyuan left, he naturally needed to return the betrothal gifts. Of course, it was impossible to give half of the betrothal gifts to him. He wouldn't want it himself. It was just a fixed number of things. The rest would be according to the rules. She didn't want to care about what others would think. After sending away her relatives and friends, Jingwan began to pack the things the next day. In order to have a good night's sleep, she didn't look at the list of gifts yesterday. Now that she saw it, Jingwan felt that she really had foresight. Then, as the big and small boxes were opened one by one, from the initial shock to the end, she was completely numb. She knew that he would cause trouble, but did he have to make it so big? Sunny Jia was silent for a moment before she faintly opened her mouth. Wan Mimi, I only thought that my dowry was already very generous. But compared to the betrothal gifts that Jin Qinhuang gave you, it seems to be a drop in the ocean. You'll just eat and wait for death for a lifetime. No matter how you squander, these things will never be finished. You have to work hard. She patted Jingwan's shoulder. Jingwan unhappily glared at her. Was there anyone who spoke like this? However, Jingwan used to think that she was a rich woman and her sister-in-law was a nouveau riche. Now, in comparison, oh sure enough, her vision was still a bit short-sighted. Compared to the real nouveau riche, they were just small commoners. But these things couldn't all be used as a dowry and brought back to Jin Qinhuang Fu. Just like the bolts of cloth, there were too many of them. She wouldn't be able to use them all in her lifetime. And after a long time they might spoil. Moreover, it was fine if it was just a single color, but those that had patterns were refurbished almost every year. After a few years it would change greatly. If a certain person's attitude towards her was still the same, how could he let her wear clothes made of outdated materials? Rather than piling them up and wasting them in the future, it was better to send them out now. Thus, Jingwan began to send out a large number of gifts. She let the servant girls by her side repeatedly send out a few bolts at a time. Although most of these materials had been used by the Luo family, but after all, they were in the minority. It was really the first time that so much was sent out at once. These are all the best materials. Third Mimi didn't take them seriously and sent them out. It can be seen that the quantity sent by Jin Wang is extremely large. Little Wangshi fondly touched the materials. I'm afraid that she has even better ones. Alright, that's enough. Don't be greedy. Among these materials there are a few that we haven't used before. The best ones in the entire year of Qiyuan are only a little bit. It's not something we can dream of. Look at what Nyang is saying. How could I not know this? I just said that. And keep them and use them slowly. Don't take them all out and waste them. Sixth girl has her own. Don't worry about her. Later I will have someone send eldest girl's share over. When third last gets married, you can take some materials from me and send them back to your parents' home. Keep these things well and they can be kept for many years. When your two sisters-in-law marry into the family in the future, you can give them some. It's also very good. Little Wangshi nodded and didn't say anything. Looking at this large pile of materials, Luo Laofuren didn't say anything and didn't stop Jingwan. She knew what Jingwan was thinking and didn't want to beat anyone. In the Luo family there weren't many who were really stupid. Those who got 1 and thought 2, 2 and thought 3. After getting 3 they couldn't wait for others to give them all. After all, if there was really someone who was ungrateful, there probably wouldn't be a share next time. No one was a spendthrift. There were many who were close to them and few who were estranged. There were many elders and few juniors. For example, eldest aunt's family got 2 portions. Second aunt's family didn't even get 1. The truth was Jingwan also held grudges. When the pearls were turned over, Jingwan directly leaned on the side of the box and lost her mind. The size of the boxes were all the same, about half a person's height. One of the boxes was filled with finger-sized white pearls that were soft and beautiful. The second and third boxes were filled with different colored pearls. There were translucent green, translucent blue, translucent purple, translucent brown, translucent silver gray, and also pink, light yellow, light gold, golden pink, pinkish purple. Jingwan even saw rose pink, lavender purple and a small box of black pearls. She had once given Yu Yao a golden pink. Jingwan even lamented that it was a big deal. Compared to this, Jin Wang, you are too stingy with your own cousin. And the fourth box, on the surface, there were 3 relatively small brocade boxes. Jingwan opened it and was momentarily speechless. Each box only had a pair of round pearls, a pair of south pearls, a pair of east pearls. The sizes were uniform with a diameter of more than 2 centimeters. There was also a pair of slightly smaller black pearls. 6 pearls, all of them were dazzling. It was natural that they were hailed as national treasures. Quickly put it away, put it away. If you continue to look, I will snatch it. Sunny Jia's face was full of envy and jealousy. Jingwan found it funny and solemnly put it away. If she didn't put it away properly, she was worried that her hand would tremble when she held it in her hand. The remaining pearls were not round pearls but other shapes. They were divided according to color and shape. Pear-shaped, teardrop-shaped, oblate-shaped, lozenge-shaped, square-shaped, a wide variety of shapes. But it was very obvious that they were also carefully selected. The color and luster were uniform, the same color and shape, and the size and shape were very similar. It was more difficult than selecting a single round pearl. In the case where most of them were round pearls, it seemed to be even more precious. Among the nearly 100 pieces of precious calligraphy and paintings left behind from history, Jingwan only took out 2 pieces. Therefore each piece was individually packed. As for the rest, Jingwan didn't want to look at them. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to bear it. There were also more than a dozen boxes of antiques. Jingwan didn't even dare to touch them. Whether it was calligraphy, paintings, or antiques, these things couldn't be reproduced. Losing one was one less thing. They carried not only history but also cultural heritage. To a certain extent, nothing could compare to their value. As for the big box of gems, Jingwan opened one of the boxes. After being blinded by the sapphire inside, she decided not to touch it. She was worried that she would lose her life. Red, green, yellow, purple, and black. There must be all kinds of gems. Jingwan realized belatedly that she seemed to have hooked up with a super rich person. Moreover, it was a very, very rich person who was very, very generous. However, they were going to be together legally, so it seemed a little inappropriate to say that. In the end, Jingwan gave out more than half of the box of white pearls and didn't touch the rest. After all, it was a small number. If she gave it out, everyone would get less. It was better to slowly make it into finished jewelry in the future and give it to them. Fortunately, there was no real estate, land, or medicinal materials. Otherwise, perhaps as Madame Luo said, there was no need to prepare anything except for the furniture and the dowry. After those treasures were all packed up, There didn't seem to be much overall. Out of sight, out of mind, she could deceive herself by saying that they were just boxes. As for the rest, Jingwan was most worried about those ready-made clothes. There were thousands of pieces. It would take 3 years to wear one set every day and then throw it away. The problem was that those clothes were basically her current size. She was now in the period when she was growing. Many of the clothes wouldn't fit in at most 3 months. She wanted to grab Li Hongyuan's collar and ask him if there was water in his brain. How could he do such an unreliable thing? Those clothes were all exquisitely made. How much manpower did it take? How much time did it take? It definitely couldn't have been prepared recently, but the size was so accurate. However, when she was about to close the box of gems, Jingwan noticed a different box. She picked it up, opened it and then closed it again. Damn, it was full of banknotes of 10,000 taels each. Compared to the 300,000 taels on the surface, it was definitely more than that. It was estimated that it was more than just a little bit more. Sure enough, it was super rich. When Jingwan saw Madame Luo in the evening, she was a little listless and worried. After Madame Luo learned of Jingwan's thoughts, she said that she was stupid, just give it away. But Jingwan actually couldn't accept other people's clothes. Even if it was new clothes, unless it was a special case, she would rather wear her own clothes than wear other people's good clothes. It had nothing to do with pride. No buts. You're thinking too much. Not many people care about this. You keep half of it. Even if you can't wear it soon, it's still necessary as a dowry. Pick out those that are not suitable to be given away and those that can be worn later. Send the rest to me and I'll deal with it. Jin Qinhuang gave it to you. There are no bad things. There are many people fighting for it. With someone helping, Jingwan was naturally happy. There was another matter. Zumo, Jin Qinhuang's wealth really won't be taboo to the emperor? Those things obviously came from all over the world. Without a bit of manpower and material resources, it's impossible to get them. Since he dared to take them out, naturally he's not afraid of anything. Sometimes you don't need to use your own people to do things. So Wan, you don't have to worry. He will take care of these things himself. Zumo seems to be a little different to Jin Qinhuang. Not only Zumo but grandfather too. He's about to become your husband, Wan. Jingwan didn't believe it was because of this reason. Zumo was hiding something from her, but Jingwan didn't pursue the matter. There were some things that she would understand one day. After another 2 days, it was time for the formal invitation. Because the wedding date had already been set, the invitation was just a formality. 7 days before the wedding, Jingwan's wedding clothes were sent over. From head to toe, from inside to outside, it was complete. Because she was marrying into the imperial family, the style and embroidery of the clothes were very particular. Thus, it saved Jingwan a lot of effort. But as the wedding date was getting closer and closer, Jingwan's dowry furniture had not yet arrived. Jingwan's furniture. Old Madame Luo had prepared it in Qianfu a few years ago. This kind of large thing, in fact, not many high officials and nobles would buy it in the capital. Not to mention that there wasn't much good wood near the capital. Even if it was transported by wood merchants, the price was very expensive. With a family background, which one of them didn't make furniture in their own territory, old Madame Luo was a little anxious. She repeatedly sent people dozens of li or even hundreds of li away to greet them, afraid that there would be a delay. Fortunately, 2 days before the wedding date finally arrived. Everyone was greatly relieved. One must know that the dowry would be sent the next day. If the most important part didn't arrive, then it would be a joke. Looking at the materials and workmanship of these large and small pieces of furniture, one could see that when old Madame Luo had people make the furniture for Jingwan, she really put in a lot of effort. Compared to Sunny Jia's, it was even better. It should be known that Sunny Jia was born in Dingguagongfu. Dingguagongfu was known as the first noble family in Qiyuan, and the Sun clan had thousands of years of heritage. It was far from the Luo family. It could be seen that old Madame Luo had spent a lot of effort on Jingwan's dowry. Before coming to the capital, Jingwan didn't know about this. Now that she saw it, she was naturally surprised and touched. In addition to the step bed, Sunny Jia made 2 sets of large pieces of furniture. They were made of red sandalwood and gold Phoebe Jinan wood. Other relatively small pieces were made of other wood. However, Jingwan only used these 2 kinds of wood. Several daughters-in-law of the Luo family even suspected that old Madame Luo had used up all the good wood that she had accumulated in the past few years. However, as the saying goes, those who receive benefits are soft-hearted, and those who receive benefits are soft-hearted. They got a lot of good things from Jingwan. 2 days later, when she married into the prince's mansion, her status would be extraordinary and noble. Jingwan was not an ungrateful person. In the future she would definitely help her maiden family. It was just some wood. Therefore their jealousy disappeared. Naturally, not only the furniture but also some good things that the Luo family had accumulated in the past 200 or 300 years were transported together. At the same time, the dowry that great elder princess had prepared for Jingwan was also sent over. There were several carriages of dowry. Perhaps it was not as good as the betrothal gifts sent by Li Hongyuan, but it was still first class compared to other high officials and noble families. This time, the people who sent the gifts from Qian Mansion were all clansmen of the Luo family. Although they were basically collateral branches, they were more or less dissatisfied that old Madame Luo gave so many good things to a girl. However, when they learned that she was going to marry the prince and be the princess, their dissatisfaction disappeared. No matter what, they couldn't ruin the reputation of the Luo family. Looking at this scene, even those who were a generation older than Luo Peishan were speechless. It was naturally a matter of pride for the Luo family to have a princess. The clansmen of the Luo family all wanted to see the fun and broaden their horizons. So many people came. Because there were so many people old and young, the speed was slowed down because there were too many people old and young. Fortunately, most of these people had immediate relatives in the capital city. Otherwise, the Luo family would definitely not be able to accommodate so many people. In the afternoon, Jingwan's maternal family also arrived quietly. Fortunately, there were not many people. Her maternal grandparents, 2 uncles, 2 cousins, aunt and other cousins did not come. Obviously, the 2 old people came specially for Jingwan's marriage. Her uncles and cousins more or less meant to explore the road. Jingwan didn't know the arrival of the Zhang family until she saw them. It was Luo Rongyin who arranged for people to pick them up. At this time, everyone was so busy that they had to settle the relatives in each branch. Anyway, the Luo family booked a lot of inns in case of emergency. Even if they wanted to meet the in-laws, they had to postpone it. Jingwan was not very familiar with them. There was no other way. They were not from Qian Prefecture. Although they were in the same prefecture as Qian Prefecture, transportation was inconvenient and they rarely had contact with each other. Without a foundation of affection, even if they were blood relatives, Jingwan could not hug and cry. She could only pay her respects politely. Although it was a little awkward, Jingwan's eldest uncle was a smooth and slick person. So, the atmosphere was quite harmonious. However, not long after, Jingwan's aunt's family also came. Coincidentally, old Madame Luo sent people to look for her. Jingwan found an excuse to leave. The people of the Zhang family were also shrewd people. They could clearly see that the Gu family and the Luo family's second branch were not very harmonious. They did not expose it directly, but they could not help but ask a few questions later. Because there were a lot of things added, all of them had to be added to the dowry list. What should be packed also had to be packed. In fact, it was simplified and simplified. For example, the pearls and gems sent by Li Hongyuan, and even the complete set of head ornaments, were still packed in boxes. Almost all of the boxes were packed to the brim and a finger could not fit in. Even so, it was still far more than 128 boxes. Finally, thinking of Jin Qinhuang's actions, they simply broke the pot and added 20 boxes, surpassing Prince Kang's wedding. In any case, they were not standing on Prince Kang's side, so there was no need to give him face. If the emperor wanted to punish them, just let Jin Qinhuang take the blame. As for the dowry property and real estate, the Luo family did not have any estates in the capital. However, when old Madame Luo married Luo Peishan, she did have a few estates, which was given to Jingwan. In addition, there were a few estates in Qianfu. The locations were not very good, but there was nothing they could do about it. After being busy until the evening, the people of the Zhang family finally met with the 2 elders of the Luo family. The 2 elders obviously already knew about the good things that the eldest daughter had done, and the younger daughter. Before this daughter got married, they did not seem to think that there was anything wrong with her temperament. Looking at it now, they simply did not have the face to face their in-laws. After not being in contact for a long time, Jingwan discovered that her maternal grandparents and uncles were all normal people. Why was it that the daughters that the 2 elders taught were each more abnormal than the other? Early the next morning, more and more people came to add to Jingwan's dowry. Chapter 235. Even some people who were only familiar with her also came to visit. As a result, there was an endless stream of people coming in and out of the Luo family. The things that were given to her were also relatively valuable. However, after being blinded by the things that Li Hongyuan sent, no matter how valuable the things were, Jingwan was able to remain calm. and her horizons had been raised by more than 1 or 2 levels. In the afternoon, the dowry was carried one after another out of the Luo family's front door. Such a rich dowry was enough for many people to talk about for a long time. As for the many clan relatives of the imperial family, the things that were placed on the surface would not cause them to do anything. As for the things in the chest, they would not look at them due to their status. However, they were very certain that there were many good things in the chest. How could the things that Jin Qinhuang sent to the Luo family be bad? The imperial family's clan relatives, from top to bottom, except for the emperor's branch, don't look at the other people holding the surname of the country. They were also falling further and further apart. Their titles fell one by one until they were just ordinary people. If they did not work hard, they might even be inferior to the common people. The emperor was rich in the world. Could it be that he still cared about the clan relatives? Generation after generation, it was unknown how many there were. It was not like he had nothing better to do. As a result, even if some people still held the title of Jun Wang, their families were actually poor, especially those who were not favored by the emperor. As a family member, their original background was not high and the good things that they had seen were limited. Naturally, they were salivating over these things. However, due to their status, they had to maintain it. Not only could they not lose their composure, they also had to have an indifferent and disdainful appearance. If they lost face and were driven out, the consequences were definitely not something that they could bear. Among Jingwan's several head maidservants, Qing Zhu and Qing Lan led the other dowry people in advance. Originally, they were a bit restrained, worried that the rules of the Wangfu were too big and that they would make a mistake and lose the girl's face. Who knew that the Wangfu's people had arranged them properly? The girl's dowry had long been arranged in a special courtyard and there was no need for them to do anything. As the supervisor, Mu Gonggong, he surrounded Qing Zhu and Qing Lan's shameless older sister and was even more attentive than the Luo family's maidservants. As the saying goes, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. This made the two even more vigilant. Touching his nose, Eunuch Mu was speechless. Well, he just wanted to build a good relationship with the people around the princess in advance. If anyone said a good word for him in front of the princess, it might be of great benefit to him. However, they didn't know that he was trying to curry favor with their master. They only knew that he was the prince's personal eunuch and the head steward of the prince's residence. In their eyes, he was considered high and mighty. Under normal circumstances, after their master married into the family, they would have to give him some face. The ones who should be fawning over him were them. They hadn't even done anything yet, but he had already done something that was completely unfitting of his status. Wouldn't that make them stand up all over their body and guard against him for plotting against them? If Eunuch Mu knew what they were thinking, he would probably say one word: how wronged. Speaking of which, among the maidservants, Qing Zhu was the oldest. Originally, they wanted to find a person who could entrust her life to Jingwan before she got married. However, the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. Jingwan got married at least a year earlier than expected. However, even if she got married, she would still become a dowry in the end. In the evening, Mrs. Zhang came to Jingwan's place and waved away the servants. "Mother, it's so late. What's the matter?" Jingwan asked with some doubts. Madame Zhang stealthily took out something and looked at her daughter as she stammered. When Jingwan saw her behavior and saw the shape of the thing wrapped in a brocade handkerchief, she roughly understood that this was an adult education before marriage. However, it was obvious that her mother wasn't a qualified teacher. After hesitating for a long time, she didn't say a word. In the end, under Jingwan's puzzled gaze, she hurriedly stuffed the thing into her hands. "Wanwan, take a good look. Mother will go back first." As if something was chasing after her, Mrs. Zhang walked very quickly. Jingwan couldn't help but laugh. However, she still picked it up and wanted to see what the Qiyuan's erotic pictures looked like. She took off the brocade handkerchief and casually flipped through 2 pages. To be honest, the characters weren't beautiful enough. However, the key points were clearer than expected. Not to mention that in Jingwan's previous life, she wasn't unfamiliar with such things. Even in this life there was an unruly bastard. Even if it wasn't the last step, he would still say it. He deliberately lowered his voice and whispered in her ear. At the same time, he also gestured with his hands. Jingwan was burning with anger. Jingwan immediately closed the book and threw it aside. The man in the book was far worse than a certain someone. What was the point of looking at him? Moreover, Jingwan raised her eyebrows. This book might be a scourge. According to a certain someone's magical brain circuit, would he be jealous because she saw another man's body? She would be the one to suffer. When Nanny Gong came in, Jingwan was fiddling with the wick of the lamp with a silver stick. she said in a light voice. "Nanny, take this book and burn it." Nanny Gong walked forward and picked up the book on the bed. She knew what it was. "Young lady, you can't burn this thing at the bottom of the box. It's one of the necessities of the dowry. It's inauspicious to lose it." "Oh, then Nanny can put it at the bottom of the box." Jingwan's voice was still indifferent. However, Granny Gong, who was familiar with Jingwan's personality, knew that her miss was just using her calmness to cover up her reluctance to talk about this matter. The main reason she didn't want to talk about it was because she was shy. Her young lady was about to get married. The prince could finally get what he wanted. Although she had known that this day would come, she was happy but also a little disappointed. However, Jingwan didn't expect that a certain someone would attack her at night again. Didn't they say that they couldn't see each other for 3 days before the wedding? Therefore, he didn't do anything other than hug Jingwan to sleep. Thinking about it, Jingwan was going to bathe and wear the wedding dress tomorrow. If there were traces on her body, it would be really troublesome. He didn't move. Jingwan was in a daze. She was not fully awake and subconsciously leaned into his arms. When she was about to fall asleep, Jingwan remembered something. "Shouldn't there be a boy sleeping with you tonight? Is it okay for you to run away like this?" Jingwan also thought it was quite interesting. 1 to 3 nights before the wedding, a young man with both parents would sleep with the groom, and he would sleep on the inside of the bed. He was called the best man. At night he would eat steamed buns, peanuts and eggs for this young man. When he left on the morning of the wedding day, he would give him a red packet, which was commonly known as the urine bottle. The best man was only a few years old. It was totally different from her previous life. "How can we let someone who doesn't want to sleep on our bed?" Li Hongyuan said matter-of-factly. "So, I fed the child some calming medicine and threw it somewhere else. Anyway, this prince doesn't follow the rules." Jingwan raised her eyes and glanced at him. Did that mean that he really meant what he said and did? She didn't bother with him anymore. She would be tired tomorrow. Li Hongyuan shifted Jingwan's body, trying to make him more comfortable. The reason he came to look for Jingwan was purely because he couldn't sleep. The closer it was to the wedding date, the more difficult it was for him to sleep at night. It wasn't because he was nervous but because he was excited. From head to toe he was screaming with excitement. He didn't try to control himself, instead he let himself go. However, it was true that he hadn't had a good rest for the past few days. Although he didn't feel anything, his body was more or less affected. It was his wedding with Wanwan, so he naturally wanted to be in his best condition. In fact, Jingwan could really make him sleep well. Jingwan didn't see him when she woke up. She was used to it. In the future, that bastard could hug her and sleep for as long as he wanted. He didn't need to worry about anyone bumping into him. Jingwan didn't know what that bastard was feeling. In the future, she didn't need to sneak around like a thief. Jingwan was quite happy. As for the many problems that she might face after the wedding, Jingwan naturally wasn't a coward. She would do whatever she needed to do. Today, Jingwan couldn't do morning exercises. Many people came to her place early in the morning. Madame Quanfu, the matron of honor, and many maids. She was very busy from the beginning, but she was busy but not disorderly. However, Jingwan was tormented to the point that she felt a little pitiful. She had to bathe a total of 3 times, use all kinds of flower petals and aromatherapy, and then do a full body care. Even though she was used to Nanny Gong's daily care, Jingwan still felt tormented and silently sympathized with other women. However, Jingwan did not know that not every bride was like this. It was because the person she was marrying was of noble birth that it was so cumbersome. In the end, it was because of the disaster brought by the other party's identity. Just like those concubines, they had to work hard to please the bride. Their purpose was the same. They had to be beautiful from head to toe. They had to be so beautiful that they could stand out from the horizon. They had to strive to charm the groom and then strive for a perfect wedding night. This was the sinister intention of everyone. Just this alone took 2 to 4 hours, and this was because Jingwan's foundation was very good. After the bath, Jingwan was finally allowed to eat something. That was the real cat food. Jingwan pitifully wanted to eat more, but was sternly refused. At the thought of being hungry until the night, Jingwan felt uncomfortable. It was a marriage between 2 people, but why could that bastard eat and drink without any scruples while she was hungry? Jingwan inexplicably felt a little resentful. More and more people gathered in the room. Jingwan's hair was loosely tied behind her head. Madame Quanfu began to twist the noodles for her. She smeared pearl powder on the face evenly. Ordinary people seemed to use flour. After that, Madame Quanfu twisted the 5-colored thread into a thread. Then, with the help of another woman, she tightened the rope and got busy. Even if Jingwan's face had few hairs, it didn't mean that there were none. When Zhou Yingshuang got married, Madame Quanfu could just let her go. Because there were few hairs, Madame Quanfu was more serious and careful. It seemed that if she couldn't twist more hairs, she couldn't show off her twisting skills. It was obviously painful, but she had to endure the pain and stay motionless like a mountain. Raise a pair of chopsticks, nobility descends from the sky. Get rid of filth and seek auspiciousness, 100 years of peace. First, clean the forehead, one won't be hungry when married, one won't be afraid of labor, filial piety will be loved. Second, clean the eyes, dispel disasters and solve difficulties, husband and wife will hold hands until their hair turns white. Third, clean the nose, protect the family and ensure peace, early birth of a son, husband and wife will be harmonious. Fourth, clean the mouth, speaking is auspicious, go on the sedan chair to the in-laws' house, happy reunion tonight. Fifth, clean the face, sparkling and translucent jade-like muscles, pure and white, good girl, I will bestow you riches and honor for 10,000 years. In order to divert her attention, Jingwan carefully listened to Madame Quanfu's words. They were all auspicious words. After twisting the noodles and cleaning her face, Jingwan's face turned red, but there were no other changes. Thinking about it, it was delicate and smooth. Many people praise Jingwan's skin. Sister's skin is good, Jin Qinhuang should love it too much to part with it. Jingwan was embarrassed and unable to show her face, causing others to cover their mouths and giggle. Jingwan let people give red envelopes. That's right, today all the things that were done for her must be given red envelopes. The bathing gift, the twisting of the noodles, the combing of the hair, the dressing of the clothes. Don't ask for too many Afterwards, Madame Quanfu began to comb Jingwan's hair. Comb to the hair, no need to worry about riches and honor. Comb to the hair, no illness and no worry. Comb to the hair, many children and long life. Comb to the tail, raise the case to the eyebrows. Comb to the tail, fly side by side. Comb to the tail 3 times, tie the heart with the heart forever. Every stroke of the comb was gentle, from the roots to the ends of the hair. It was slow with a rhythm and rhythm. The things in the congratulatory speech were probably the lifelong pursuit of many women. But, no matter how well it was said, how many people could achieve it? For Jingwan, other things could be had, but the point of many children, according to her, one outstanding child was enough. However, the world paid attention to many children and many blessings. Daughters were not considered as children, so probably no one would allow her to have only one child. Afterwards, Jingwan's hair was completely combed for the first time. To a certain extent, it already belonged to a woman's bun. Jingwan rarely put on makeup. In fact, she didn't care much about her makeup. After all, today's makeup was mainly for her newlywed husband to see. How she looked, how could that bastard not know? But the final effect was somewhat beyond Jingwan's expectations. This seemed to be the handiwork of the people around her, and their handiwork was not hers at the beginning. This should have been prepared in advance. Afterwards, Jingwan went to the inner room to change clothes. When she came out, the people in the room were all amazed. That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.